So let's move on to Jeanne Mance, our second hero of today that we're looking at. 1606, 1673. Jeanne Mance. So she was born in Langres, also in Champagne. A lot of these people come from Champagne, that part near Troyes, just Reims, that whole area near Troyes, in France, east of Paris. So she was there. She was brought up by the Ursulines. And so born in 1606, she had a cousin, Nicolas d'Olbeau, who also was reading what? The Relations of the Jesuits. We're talking about 1636 vocation here. Yeah, 1630s. Yeah, late 1630s. So Father d'Olbeau had a brother who went to Canada, who was in mission 1615, 1620. Who were the priests? 1616, 1620. They were the Recollets, remember? So he was one of the first Recollets. We had Father, was the first one? Le Caron. Father Le Caron was the superior of the Recollets. Father d'Olbeau was another one. So he had another brother who was a priest, Father Nicolas d'Olbeau, and spoke to her. So Father d'Olbeau, Nicolas, spoke to Jeanne Mance about Canada. And immediately, so we're talking about 1640, immediately she had that desire to go and help with these priests. She talked to her spiritual director. Then she went to Paris and she met these great figures in Paris, great people. Father Jean-Baptiste de Saint-Jure, Sainte Louise de Marillac, the foundress of the Sisters of Charity with St. Vincent de Paul. She met even the Queen, Anne d'Autriche, because we're talking 1640, the widow of Louis XIII. And she met the people of the Company of the Blessed Sacrament. So here's this young lady arriving in 1640. She is 34 years old. A young lady arriving and saying, I want to go. I want to go. And her spiritual director are telling the other priests, yes, she has a vocation to go to New France. Because you have to be careful, young ladies having these dreams, utopic dreams, not so easy. So her spiritual director, Father Rapine, a Jesuit, so knowing the other Jesuit, put her in touch with that very rich lady, Madame de Bullion. She was a widow as well. Her husband had been superintendent of the finance of the Kingdom of France. She was super rich. So she met Jeanne Mance, and she fell in love with Jeanne Mance, kind of adopted her, so to speak. And here is an interesting story, because Sir Jeanne Mance goes to see this rich lady. She's a millionaire. Her income was £700,000 per year. So you can add a few zeros in millions of dollars, okay? So she was really rich. And so, but the money then was coins, was heavy. And Madame de Bullion was also very discreet. So she did not want people to know I want to give you, say, 10,000 pounds. Well, that weighs, say, 100 pounds or 200 pounds. How are you going to carry this? And so in these days, it was very common. The taxis in these days were these how do you call them? These the porters, where you have 4 men carrying a person. And so, what's the name in English? Like they do in China. They do porters. You have 4 men or 2 men carrying a person. Not a rickshaw, but there's no wheels. Whatever, you understand, okay? And so there's the men bringing her to Madame de Bullion's house. And then they would go back, and she says, just come back about at 5 o'clock. And when they came back and they take her back, the thing is so heavy. The chair, the porters of that chair is, wow, you've been eating a lot. What have you done? Okay. And Jeanne Mance realized it was a bit dangerous because these men were feeling a change of weight. And each time she goes there, because she's taking the money somewhere, eventually she decided to change porters each time she went. That way she was bringing back large sum of money to finance the project of founding a hospital in Ville-Marie. Just as they founded a hospital in Montreal, Madame de la Peltrie dealt with that. Here, Madame de Bullion helped Jeanne Mance to found this hospital in Canada. So, Jeanne Mance still does not know Monsieur de la Dauversière. Not sure if she knew Maisonneuve, but she knows that there's a ship sailing to Quebec in May. She makes her way to La Rochelle in May of 41. At first, she thought she was going to help the Augustinians of Hôtel Dieu of Quebec. She did not really know what to do, perhaps help them and then go and found a Hôtel Dieu in Montreal. But when she arrives in La Rochelle, a few days before the departure, the estimated date of departure of these ships, there, somewhere around there were all the recruits, those who were sailing away. She sees Monsieur de la Dauversière, who sees her. Same thing happened, as if they had known each other forever. And instead of going to establish herself in Quebec, de la Dauversière convinced her to go straight to Montreal and do it in Montreal and explain to her God's plan on Montreal. And there she meets Maisonneuve as well. But as I told you, Maisonneuve took off from Dieppe, from the other place in Normandy. And then at the last minute, she had a scruple. She would be the only woman to travel with these 60 or 70 men. That's a bit dangerous. And providentially, 3 other ladies showed up to travel with them. So there was a group of ladies who went with them. That convinced her. So she was just a lay person. She was not a nun because of her health, perhaps because of her strong temper. She was maybe a bit of a Joan of Arc, a commander, an officer. And so she left, as you know. So, the arrival in Quebec, we have spoken about this. We have spoken about the arrival in Montreal. Okay, I'm going to skip all of this. arrival in Montreal. So the founding of Hôtel Dieu in Montreal took place. So they founded an Hôtel Dieu, but what was the hospital then? It was just a house, because they built the hospital proper only took place in 1645, so 3 years after they had arrived. So, but the tiny little hospital was just a house at the beginning. So the men were building houses, hunting, clearing the forest, clearing the trees, and don't forget, it was all done by hand. I think plus there were no animals to haul the trees. If I'm not mistaken, the first cows or the first horses arrive in Montreal around 1680. We're talking about 1640. So for 40 years, they had to cut the trees in the woods, make planks in the woods, and bring all the wood by hand to inside the fort to build whatever they had to build. Everything by hand. And so they're great. That's why, so the men had to do that. Jeanne Mance was busy with the hospital, taking care of the wounded, both French and Indians and even Iroquois. She said, I just want to heal the people. She went to France, as you can see on the timeline. Okay, she goes to France in 1646. Why did she go to France in 1646? To get some help at the Hôtel Dieu. To get some help. She comes back in 1651. I told you how she saved Ville-Marie by her donation to Maisonneuve. And mysteriously, we will see that in another conference, the fact that she gave the money to Maisonneuve, the money that was tagged for the hospital, she gave for the soldiers, for the men. A few years later, when Monseigneur de Laval arrived in 1659, he heard about that and he disagreed with that. There was a bit of a clash between Monseigneur de Laval and Jeanne Mance and Maisonneuve because of having taken the money that was destined for a purpose used for another purpose. So it's a bit of a gray area, a bit of a tension between these great people. Monseigneur de Laval was canonized. So Monseigneur Maisonneuve goes to France, comes back with whom? Marguerite Bourgeois, okay, young lady of 33 years old. She was Marguerite was born in 1620. In 1657, as she was returning from Mass, remember that detail, or notice that detail. She's returning from Mass, she slips on the ice and breaks her arm. She breaks her arm, fractured her right arm, and dislocated her wrist. The doctors, understand the word doctors in 1657, okay? A few medical people there in the fort managed to set the fracture of the arm, but failed to notice the condition of the wrist. And although she was cured, she was unable to use her arm. And so because of that, she had to consider herself no longer in charge of the hospital of Ville-Marie. And As Maisonneuve came back, when was this? No. Yeah, when he came back, when did he came back? So Maisonneuve left in 55. Forgot to put it here on the paper. But Maisonneuve came back. When he came back in July 57, Jeanne Mance went back to France to get herself fixed up in France, cured in France. There she met Monsieur Ollier, who is still alive. She met Monsieur de la Dauversière whenever they went back to France. Obviously, you meet the people. There's no telephone, no email. It's only letters. Could be once a year you get a letter from these people who are behind this whole project. And so she meets these people, but at the same time, she's trying to get cured because she's handicapped with her right arm. So she goes to, where does she go? Okay. Imagine one of the trips she made from La Rochelle to La Flèche, she did it on a stretcher. Long trip. At the same time, she was trying to get some nuns to come to the hospital. And who would be the nuns? The Sisters of Saint Joseph, founded by Monsieur de la Dauversière. Remember, the first inspiration Monsieur de la Dauversière was found a religious congregation of nuns dedicated to Saint Joseph. When he was given the management of the hospital in La Flèche, he took some young ladies, and not finding any religious congregation, he turned these ladies into nuns. That was 1636, 37. So we're talking about 20 years later. Of course, they had a number of vocations. Now they could start sending away a group of nuns. And so they got the first Sisters of Saint Joseph to come. In that trip, she goes to Paris. She goes to the chapel of Saint-Sulpice. So Monsieur Ollier has just died. He died in 57. So he has just died weeks or months before. And she's there. And of course, the fathers of Saint-Sulpice, they know all about Ville-Marie, what's going on over there. They take a relic. What relic? The heart of Monsieur Ollier. They had taken out his heart, put in a reliquary, and they put it on the arm of Jeanne Mance, who's instantly cured. Instantly cured. And she wrote a testimony of that cure. She wrote it with her right arm. And this document is put in the cause of beatification of Monsieur Ollier. So she was cured by Monsieur Ollier, who is one of the founders of Montreal. Not only he went up to heaven, but he cured Jeanne Mance, who was one of the founders of Montreal. So she goes back to France, to Ville-Marie. In 62, she goes back to France again to get some more help. She meets the fathers of Saint-Sulpice again. And now Saint-Sulpice is about to become the owner of Montreal. She returns to Montreal in 1664. And then, so Monsieur de Maisonneuve is gone. In 65, he's gone. And finally, she, because of the work of the regiment of Carignan, these soldiers who came from France and fought and killed a lot of the Iroquois, really weakened, broke the Iroquois threats. So Ville-Marie was much more at peace. And So Jeanne Mance stepped down, and she retired more or less. Her last administrative act, actually, well, she's still involved, obviously, but not as much. Her last administrative act dates from January 73, and she will die in June 18, 1673, in order of holiness, affirms Mother Jutro, one of the nuns of the Hôtel Dieu of Quebec. So there is a painting of Jeanne Mance. If you type Jeanne Mance, and you see this drawing of painting, which was done just a few decades later. Apparently, it's the true face of Jeanne Mance. So it looks pretty much what she looked like.